Hey all, I'm going to do a little reading from Love Beyond the Game. This is my collegiate sports romance. It's about a baseball player and a gymnast. They're both highly competitive athletes in their school. This is a excerpt from chapter 10. They're leaving class. They just got some food. Jeremy and Nicole are studying in econ together. They just got out of the car and noticed that his frat house is actually having a party. So that is where you find them. So the lyrics to Best Day of My Life by American Authors was being shouted from the rafters. The bass was shaking the windows. And the song didn't even have a strong bass. Before Jeremy could back out, another car pulled in behind him. Shit, he muttered under his breath. I'll call an Uber, I said, pulling out my phone. We still have to eat. We can study in my room. No one will bother us up there. It's on the 3rd floor, he reminded. Have you met you? I said with a raised brow. Did he really think we'd make it past the front door without a slew of women chasing him? Or his frat brothers calling him? Jeremy ignored me, hopped out of the car and opened my door. I got out and he carried both bags and our food to the front door. He held up our bag of food above his head as we walked through the entryway. I found myself basically cuddled up against Jeremy as people pushed and shoved. His house was packed. While I was healed enough to not wear a brace, I still didn't need people pulling or pushing or bumping my shoulder. It was only 8 o'clock and people were already drunk. Jeremy placed his arm around my waist and held it there as we walked like a protective barrier from the people surrounding us. Jay! Yelled a trio of guys from the kitchen as Jeremy and I walked in to grab bottles of water. What the bleep is this? Jeremy asked, pointing to the living room. He had a scowl on his face. Oh yeah, I'll be bleeping out the bad words. Impromptu party. Chase and Brian invited a few friends to hang, and then they invited friends. You know how it is. We were planning on going to the Alpha House party, but looks like the party came here, said one of the guys. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anyone except Nate. I elbowed Jeremy, and he finally noticed his friends looking at me. Not just looking, they were staring at me, all with either frowns or deep creases between their brows. I looked down and noticed for the first time that Jeremy hadn't let my hand go. I'm Nicole, but you can call me Nick, I said, introducing myself, since Jeremy seemed too angry to realize. Hey, said the guy who told us about the party. I'm Marty. This is Tyler and Simon, he said, pointing to each of the guys that were in the kitchen. Sorry, Jeremy said, combing his fingers through his hair. Nick and I are in econ together. We thought the house would be empty, so we came here to study. Nate walked into the kitchen then, a girl under each of his arms. He saw me with Jeremy and quickly removed himself from the girls. Nicky! He yelled, his arms outstretched as if to hug me. Jeremy stiffened as Nate wrapped me in a hug. I stiffened, to be honest. The other guys looked at Nate, then back to Jeremy. I looked up at Jeremy and shrugged my shoulder. I didn't know what to do. Why was Nate hugging me? I hadn't seen him in weeks. I'd only met him once, yet he was acting like I was his long-lost friend. Does she also go by Nicky? Simon asked, his brow furrowed. No, said Jeremy. I turned to them and pointed at myself and said to Nate directly after he pulled back, just Nick. What? He asked, looking down at me with a frown, clearly not understanding. My name, I said. My name is Nick, not Nicky. Right, he said, pointing a finger at me, then placing his hand around my shoulders. While he was similar in size to Jeremy, something about the way my body felt next to his was so uncomfortable. I felt like an armrest, the weight of his arm pushing down on me, and I winced in pain. Rather than make a fuss, I tried to remove myself from his grasp. I walked to Jeremy and grabbed the bag of food, then made my way to the counter and began removing the containers, placing the boxes on the countertop. Simon grabbed me a plate and placed it in front of me. Thanks, I said, smiling at him. He smiled back. You're welcome, he said with a wink. I hopped on one of the stools as Jeremy grabbed 2 forks from the utensil drawer and a plate for himself, then sat next to me. For some reason, Nate scowled at him. What the bleep, dude? And you went to Dickie's and didn't bring me anything? Nate asked, his voice raised. I honestly didn't think anyone would be here, Jeremy said. We came here to study. Nate, where's the beer? One of the girls he'd come into the kitchen with asked, trying to get his attention. For some reason, Nate looked at me. He frowned and blinked a few times. But I guess I didn't do what he wanted because he turned and hooked his arms back over the shoulders of the other girls and left the kitchen. "Hey, Jay," a brunette said as she entered the kitchen. She walked over and tried to grab a piece of his brisket. I laughed at the look of horror on his face. "What are you doing?" he asked. His mouth opened as he pulled his food away from her. He glared at the girl. "Sharing," she said with a coy smile. She placed her hand on his arm and leaned toward him. She looked as though she was moving in to kiss him. My stomach recoiled. My chest tightened. What the hell? I was upset. But I couldn't be upset. I couldn't. We were just friends. "Are you serious right now?" he asked, bending back away from her. He was practically leaning against me. When I say practically, I mean he was completely leaning against me. He pointed to himself, then to me. I had no idea what he was communicating. Could this night get any more confusing? The girl tilted her head and drew her brows together. "I thought you said she was just a study partner," the girl asked, moving in again to kiss him. "No, I said we came home to study." "When did I say she was just a study partner?" he asked. His tone was terse. Simon and the other guys looked at each other, then at me, as though I knew what he was talking about. I just shrugged. What was I if not his study partner? My fork stopped halfway to my lips, transfixed by the scene. "Come on, Jay," the girl cooed, her crop top moving farther up her torso as she placed an arm around his neck. Jeremy pushed back, the bar stool legs making a screeching sound as they scratched across the hardwood floor. He grabbed his food, closed the lids of the containers, grabbed his plate and mine, and placed them on top of the boxes. "Come on, Nick, we can eat in my room," he said, leaving the kitchen. Everyone stood and stared at me. The girl gave me a once-over, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, then said, "I don't get it." "Get the bleep out," Simon said, walking over to stand beside me. Jeremy must not have heard us because he didn't stop at the doorway. Dude just kept going like a man with a plan. A plan to get away from everyone, apparently. I couldn't even yell, "Wait up." "What?" the girl said. "You can't come in here and insult my friend," Simon told her, crossing his arms over his chest. I looked up at Simon, my mouth agape. "Thank you, but it's okay," I said softly, leaning toward him. I didn't want to cause a confrontation. But as I looked around, all the guys had scowls on their faces, their arms crossed like bodyguards. Then the girl snickered, crossing her arms. "What is this, a shared house toy?" she said. Okay, my mouth legit dropped open. What the bleep did she just say? I mean, what? "Get the bleep out," Tyler said, his voice low. I swear it sounded like a growl. He pointed to the door. Tyler was no joke. He was tall. Not as tall as Jeremy, but wider in his shoulders. His hair was buzzed short, with a wave fade around the back and sides. His brown eyes held no room for argument. He pointed his dark brown arm to the door and held it there. "Let me show you the way out," Marty said. Marty had a light accent, almost undetectable. The men in this house were all gorgeous. Marty had dark olive-toned skin and brown eyes. They had shined kindly at me earlier. Now, though, he was totally a different guy. Even though he had a smile on his face, it was kind of menacing, and I didn't reach his eyes. His voice was low compared to Tyler's booming voice, and fierce anger on my behalf. Marty looked pissed. He grabbed the girl on the shoulder and lightly guided her out of the kitchen. I followed, trying to figure out where Jeremy had gone, as I watched Marty literally push the girl out the front door. He opened it and closed it behind her. He wiped his hands clean as he walked toward me. "Jay's room is on the 3rd floor, last door on the right," he said, patting my shoulders. "Thank you," I said, confused by everything that had just happened. What the hell? I mean, that was incredible. They all stood up for me and didn't even know me. These guys were just amazing people. "A friend of Jay's is a friend of all of us," Marty explained. "No one insults our friends." He nudged me under the chin, then pointed me towards the stairs. And there you have it. A little excerpt from Love Beyond the Game. Not so little, apparently. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. You can get it on Amazon. Hope you enjoyed it.